So just let's just start with the issue with the Clinton. I mean, so why did you break ranks with Bill Clinton and give me a sympathetic view of why someone would not be happy to see the Clintons back in the White House?
Oh, where do I start, really? I mean, they're about the pursuit of power by almost any constitutional means possible. There's a lack of integrity to both of them, it seems to me. I witnessed this firsthand. I was editor of the New Republic when Clinton first became president, and the New Republic was, under my editorship, actually championed the Clinton candidacy, one of the first. Sidney Blumenthal, may God forgive me, was my campaign correspondent in 92. And you saw with Sidney, when I actually caught him faxing pieces to Hillary in advance of their publication to check that he'd got every single spin right, again shows just who these people are. They're operators. They're at the center of a web of, we used to call it Clincest, of friends and colleagues dedicated to the advancement of each other. They are money grubbers. They are liars. And I, for one, for example, in the early 90s, was one of the first advocates of marriage equality and for military service for gay people. And to watch them kill us in that period and treat gay people with complete contempt, and then to portray themselves as pioneers of gay civil rights, the sheer chutzpah of these people when they were actually not just against marriage equality, they did everything in their power to kill off the movement for marriage equality. And I know because I was, in one ways, one of 4 people in that movement at the beginning.
Did you ever hear Hillary Clinton on Fresh Air with Terry Gross trying not to admit that her opinion on marriage equality had changed for about 10 minutes and getting more and more defensive?
Well, that's part of what drives you crazy about them, is their refusal to tell the truth even about themselves, the constant spinning, the constant refusal to really be accountable. And this also goes to Bill Clinton's history of sexual assault. One of the things I'm proudest of at the New Republic was running an editorial defending Paula Jones's right to have a say in court, which was greeted by the Democratic left as an act of treason. The way in which honest alleged feminists were prepared to sacrifice every single principle they ever had to advance this man who was essentially one of the most horrendous offenders in dealing with women sexually, just staggered me at the time. And Hillary Clinton, of course, in full knowledge of her husband's history of sexual assault and harassment, went to town in defending him and trashing those women. All of that the Trump campaign has re-aired is true. I absolutely believe is true.
Actually, one question there, because I'm not as familiar with the history as I might be. I certainly haven't waded through all the relevant biographies, but many people think that Hillary was legitimately deceived by Bill on many of these points. And certainly, let's say the Lewinsky scandal, that she had bought his lie that nothing had happened, and you could sort of see her reaction to the truth emerging kind of play out in real time between them.
I think that's absolutely true with Lewinsky.
Okay.
It's not true with Jennifer Flowers. It's not true with Paula Jones. It's not true with Juanita Broderick. It's not true with Kathleen Willey. I mean, and others who are beginning to come forward. I think to say that Hillary Clinton was not aware of her husband's a tendency for sexual assault and objectification and demeaning and degrading treatment of women is really not to do her justice. She's a grown person. She sat for 60 minutes in 92 brazenly lying about her husband's affair with Jennifer Flowers. Almost everyone around her acknowledges this. And yet she's stuck with her husband. And not only this, but at the very beginning, this pioneer of feminism decided that her career could only really get off the ground if she married an up-and-coming governor and hitched her wagon to his. This is not what Margaret Thatcher did. It's not what Theresa May did. It's not what Angela Merkel did. It's not what many pioneering women in politics have done, which is why I think it sticks in the craw to see her, and why so many people have not been able to embrace her as the first potential woman president. However much we might want to see a woman become president, somehow the wife of a former president who trashed women on the way up and who herself never did the feminist thing and pioneered her own career and her own life in politics, is actually not a great feminist icon at all. And always arguing that whatever we do, however we behave, we are so much part of the greater good, and the Republicans are always so evil that anything we do is justified. And that, of course, is how they have succeeded, largely because every time the Republicans have opposed them, they've done so on despicable and overreaching grounds. I mean, impeaching a president the way they did was such a grotesque overreach, and the way they poured into Bill Clinton's private life was just appalling. And I think the American people decided, no, if we have to pick between this charlatan, philanderer, liar, and these fanatics, then I guess we're going to have to put up with the Clintons. And in some ways, that's the story of their entire career. And somehow they've managed to always do that, to play the lesser of two evils successfully, and in most cases, absolutely rightly. I mean, I drew the line at the impeachment. Even though I believed that he was a hideous person, I don't think he should have been taken to that. It should have been taken as a vote of censure would have been perfectly acceptable and would have been better for the Republicans. But there again, you get the sort of sense that not only do they want to just survive by hook or by crook, jettisoning principles, trashing the constituencies they're supposed to support, they then want to turn around and be regarded as civil rights pioneers for women or for gays and all the rest of it. And I'm sorry, but I don't buy it. I just don't buy it.
Do you think you're being, or possibly being, too cynical here on a few points? So, for instance, what about the possibility that Hillary stuck by Bill through all of this and obviously got married in the first place to him, not based on some Machiavellian political scheming, but just this is the person she's in love with. She has accepted his flaws in a way that may harken back to another generation, Mad Men style. And she was just all in with him and realized that in some purely pragmatic and obviously not honest way, since they're on the right side of history on most of these issues, since they have the right goals for the country, this is how the sausage gets made. You got to get on 60 Minutes and lie about this meaningless affair that you don't care about, and you're the wife, you're the one who's supposed to care, or you're the only one who needs to care if caring is called for. And you have to lie because this is going to torpedo your political career and your husband's, and it matters because the other side is wrong on issues of consequence for millions of people. Is there a way to sympathize with her in that moment, or is she still a bit of a monster even then?
Of course, everybody's a human being, and I don't doubt that she did fall in love with Bill Clinton. But at the same time, I think it would be naive to believe that their marriage was entirely about love. It was also a political partnership, and in which she used that partnership to gain political power in a way that I think was fundamentally illegitimate in the first Clinton administration. We elect one president. We didn't elect two. If we had elected two presidents or a co-president, she would be ineligible to run right now. But she wanted her cake and eat it too. She wants to be, the advocate of a clean system in government and against campaign finance abuses. But there she is, making millions of dollars in ways she didn't need to, of very many banks, of many entities, and many foreign governments that are just despicable. You can't. There's plenty of ways to excuse what they did and to justify it, and they provided those excuses and justifications. And in many cases, as I said, I supported Clinton in 92. But over the long run, these things do change you. That if you sacrifice your integrity repeatedly, even if every single time for a little bit, it might be in your mind justified, the cumulative effect of this is to render you incapable of taking any principled or moral position. and be seen to be doing so. People, when they say they don't trust her, I think most people have watched closely, and they know that, yes, she will switch around. She will change. She will be pragmatic around principle in a way that cumulatively gets to be disturbing.
Mm.
And I think that's the point. No politician is, Martin Luther King Jr. They're not. We have to accept that. But there's something particularly sustained and merciless about her sacrifice of principles in pursuit of power. And I think to be skeptical about that, and also to believe that that kind of figure can never actually reach people and persuade them in moments of difficulty or crisis, that there's someone that they can look to, there's someone they can trust. She still doesn't have that. She doesn't have that with the American people. She's still unable in a crisis, I think, if she were president, and I think she probably will be at this point, to actually sit down and really be the president of all the people in a way, for example, that Barack Obama could and did, however hostile people are to him. He did have that connection. People do actually think of him as having integrity because he actually does have integrity. Now, he's a hard act to match, and that's why he beat her. But here again, you've been in the White House for 2 terms as First Lady. You've been Secretary of State. You lost your major attempt to win. What do you do? What you do in her case was to try and prevent any rising star in the Democratic Party from ever challenging her, holding on so that it's her turn, holding the entire party hostage to her own fortunes, squelching possible new blood in order to get another term in the center of power. And at some point, look, I don't want to saint, but there was something consistent about this. And it's typified, for example, by her, claiming to be an avatar of gay rights while her husband signed the Defense of Marriage Act, doubled the number of people discharged from the military. And then, crucially, I'll give you 2 examples. One, ran advertisements in the South touting in 96 his exclusion of gay people from marriage equality. And subsequently, and I'll tell you this, when I went in, I was testifying in Congress for the Defense of Marriage Act, and we were ready to go in and make our case. That very morning, the Clinton Justice Department put out a completely unnecessary guidance that they believed that the Defense of Marriage Act had no constitutional problems whatsoever, just to kick us in the gut, to kill off this movement because it might threaten, they believed, their re-election prospects. And I think, to be honest, I'd be straightforward, it's the personal experience of this, to be personally lied to be told, as I was personally told by George Stephanopoulos, that they would, in Don't Ask, Don't Tell, completely ensure that no one was subsequently fired. And yet they doubled the discharges from the military and did nothing about it. And to sign the Defense of Marriage Act, for Bill Clinton to do that while he's making a mockery of marriage in the White House, at some point, you just have to say, there's something about these people. There is something about these people that is not trustworthy. There's something about these people that in the end will defend themselves against any principle. And I admire a certain grittiness in politics, and I certainly understand why you have to make compromises. There's something about the relentless willingness to sacrifice any core principles that they have that has rightly made us, many of us, deeply skeptical of them. I also think, just leave the moral and ethical question, I just don't think she's been that good in public life. I just don't think she's a very good, not just a very good politician, which now even her supporters acknowledge, and as a candidate, a terribly weak candidate in many respects, but not very good in government. When you ask her what has she done in 30 years, she doesn't really have a good argument. She has one good argument, I think, which is the S-chip program, which really did give children greater health security, health insurance options than they had before, which I don't want to dismiss in any way. That's a huge achievement on her part. But that's about it. She also, by bungling healthcare reform in the first term of the Clinton administration, made expanding health insurance of people less likely for another 20 years. As Secretary of State, she supported, the only ways you can see her actual input, she supported Libyan intervention, which, if you've supported the Iraq War and say you've learned the lessons, which is the best way to think of what she said, although she's took a hell of a long time admitting it, and only admitted it when it would help her politically, one points out. But then to admit that you did something stupid by deciding that you're going to remove a dictator in a Middle East country without planning for the aftermath, and then do it entirely one more time when you're Secretary of State, creating chaos in Libya.
Right. Although many people have pointed out that there was at least one relevant difference there, which is that you had a significant popular uprising calling for intervention in Libya, which you didn't have in Iraq.
Well, you did. I mean, the Shia were constantly, and the Kurds were constantly asking for intervention, begging for it.
I think even now, America's intervention in Libya is still popular. I mean, it's like 70% of Libyans think that it was a good thing.
That it is a chaotic situation where ISIS has gained ground. I think there was bad judgment on her part. And I think it's one of the greatest mistakes. And even now, she is attempting to get us militarily involved in Syria. She's learned very little from her own mistakes. And I think it's very hard. And I think you could see it in the debates for her to actually defend her record, to point anything that really she made a difference that wasn't itself disastrous.